Hey, everybody. It is time and to go live one more time on Facebook here in our group in the Facebook Parent Revolution group. So every day this week, I have been live at 12 noon, and I have been endeavoring to bring to you some of the tips and strategies that parents come to me and ask for my help uh, in terms of consulting, getting their kids into great colleges and not having to overpay for tuition. So today, of course, we cannot get out of this week without dealing with a big topic, the topic that you knew was probably going to have to come. And yes, it is all about testing. We're going to talk about it today. And really, what I'm going to be sharing with you, I have quite a few images I'll be sharing. The point of this next 20, 30 minutes is for you to help wrap your brain around a couple of things. First of all, what might be the best test for your student, SAT or ACT? Secondly, what are the timelines by which you can best prepare them for those exams? And then we're going to certainly talk about what has happened recently, which is that we've got test optional trending, meaning that a lot of colleges, especially because of the pandemic, have gone test optional. Now, test optional does not necessarily mean that the colleges don't want to see exam scores. It means that they know they can't require them. What I've seen this last year is that a lot of students who did get in early decision and early action actually submitted scores, but some of them had started much earlier. So this is a word to the wise for those of you who have students maybe in 9th or 10th grade. Not that you have them do the full exam that early unless they have completed Algebra 2, okay? So the math section of both of these exams sort of caps at Algebra 2 and Trig. You do not need to worry about pre-calc or full calculus on either exam, but when students try to take those full exams in 9th or 10th, if they haven't done a pretty aggressive course rigor, they aren't going to be able to take on certainly the math section and even the English sections, the reading, writing, the science section of the ACT. All of these different parts of these exams are really timed to be most appropriately aligning with students who are in the 11th grade. But there is a strategy behind this, as always, because this is what we do here. So the PSAT as one set of data that can help you get a sense of where is my student falling on the sort of bell curve of where a typical student across the US might be at different grade levels. Of course, culminating in 11th grade with the National Merit Scholarship qualifying test, the NMSQT, that happens in the junior year. So in other words, kids take the PSAT sometimes all the way back in middle school, certainly 9th and 10th, but the NMSQT is something that happens in 11th grade. Now, you don't get a giant scholarship, you don't get a full ride or anything close to it, but for students who score in the top 3% of their state, there can be honors, accolades, it's something that can be added to their profile when they're applying to college, when it says, is there anything else you want us to know? Do you have any honors? Do you have any competitions that you've won and so forth? So this is something that looks great on an application. So we're going to dive right in. We're going to talk about SAT versus ACT. And I'm going to begin just by helping you get a sense of how this is set up. So we're going to talk today about a strategy I've been using for many years with many clients. I've been doing this for over 20 years. And the thing that I can share with you is that the way that the student thinks and the types of courses that they excel in can give you some great indicators of which exam might be a better fit for them. Because let's face it, although some counselors and some test prep agencies or whatever will come to you and say, just have them take 2 full-length exams. Keep in mind that each of those full-length exams is, 3.5 to 4 hours of their time on a Saturday morning that, they can't get that time back. Only one of the exams is going to be the right fit for them anyway. So let's talk about the different ways that students think. So, the idea of brain dominance, we have two hemispheres to the human brain. And so it is known that the left brain and the right brain have different types of things that they focus on. So the left brain tends to be very logical and sequential. What you're seeing there is basically a description of two different types of students. So the question I want you to ask yourself is which of these two types of students do I have? Is my child more left brain dominant? Are they very analytical? Are they very objective? Or are they more right brain dominant? Do they tend to see the big picture of things? Are they more able to synthesize things, more subjective? There's another way that you can look at this. And the next slide that I'm going to show you breaks it down even more specifically. So if we look at this, you can get a sense of the strongest subjects. So is your student stronger in math and science, or are they stronger in English, history, the arts? Now, granted, there are many students who are great at all their subjects. Like, sometimes parents will say to me in consultations, gosh, I don't know because my student is really good at everything, or they really struggle in both of these. But in general, this can be a pretty great way of approaching. So what I'm going to do is just have you think about which of these describes your student. And here we go. I am going to show you the final slide in this sequence, which tells you exactly what the recommendation might be. So the ACT has 4 sections. It has an English section. It has a math section. It has the reading section. So critical reading skills, and then it also has the science. It ends with a science section. The ACT science section is particularly notorious for challenging students because they have 40 questions in 35 minutes and a lot of charts and data that they have to get through. So the ACT tends to be a stronger exam for students who are very strong in science, math, and those engineering type, STEM type courses. So when you look at the SAT, you can see that this tends to be a better exam for students who are stronger in those humanities-based subject areas. English, arts, certainly the kids who are great in all their history courses and so forth. So that gives you a bit of a sense about that. Now, choosing an exam implies that there always has to be an exam. Let me just make very clear that test optional is a big trend right now. And a great resource I want to recommend you to is fairtest.org. So you'll want to write that down in your notebook. Again, I'm reminding parents you want to have a notebook where you're taking notes on the things that I'm sharing here. You want to take advantage of that resource, fairtest.org, because that is actually what I would consider the gold standard clearinghouse for up-to-date information about which colleges and universities are planning to stay test optional next year and which ones are not, which ones are going to go back to requiring these exams. So again, fairtest.org will be a great resource for you there. So think about which exam you want them to target. Do not burn your student out by expecting them to take numerous full-length exams. That's not a productive way to approach these things. I will say that, there are timelines that you want to keep in mind. So let's talk for just a quick second about a testing checklist that you want to think of. I kind of made a dumb joke here, but target the right or left test. Get it, right? The right test, not the wrong test. So, again, if they are sort of more of that left brain, science, technology, engineering, math, you'll probably want them to target the ACT. It bears mentioning that although all colleges and universities when they accept tests, will accept either of those two. Certain majors really do have a preference for one or the other. And I'll mention as an example, engineering programs. Because the ACT has a science section, they like the ACT. It doesn't mean they won't accept the SAT, but that is something to keep in mind if your student is aiming for certain majors align more clearly with certain exams. So you've got that. You want to keep your timelines in mind. So, it is very, very common these days that students take these exams 2 or even 3 times. These exams are not free. However, if a student has sort of a lower socioeconomic background, they can apply for reduced cost testing. That's something that you can look into through the collegeboard.org, which is the folks who administer the SAT, or through ACT, which is obviously where they administer the ACT. So there is also something that you want to write in your notebook here, other things to be aware of, score choice and super score. So not all schools will allow you to take multiple exams and not submit them. In fact, some of the more selective and highly selective schools in the country will require that all scores for official exams, not practice tests, but an official exam, they'll say, we require that you let us see all of those. Because I think that the idea here is that it's really not fair, if you think about it, to have an unlevel playing field where student A can only afford to take it once, student B can take it 3 or 4 times and get all the tutoring help and then have their score go up, but maybe they started at the same place. So it's an interesting ethical question that a lot of colleges and universities have had to navigate. So as you can see, there's score choice and super score options. So score choice is when you can say, I'm not going to send this attempt, but I am going to send that one. Super score is actually, I think that's kind of a neat one. Not all schools allow it, but they will, when they do, super score, and you can just look on the admissions page and get this information on any university. Do they super score? And what that means is they might have, if you took 2 attempts at the SAT, and on one of them, the student does better on evidence-based reading and writing, and on the other one, they did better in math, they will take the 2 highest scores, put them together, and make a super score. So that is what that means. So this is all part of your strategy you want to have in mind as you plan out your timelines. So that is the next thing that we need to talk about. We're covering a lot today, guys. I'm having to go at a breakneck pace to get you everything that you need on this topic. So when you're thinking about timelines, you do want to have your student prepping in time. Typically, my clients end up doing a 12-week prep cycle before the first official test date, the official exam date. Those exam dates, I'll make sure I post them here in our Facebook group. If you're not already a member of our Facebook group, let me just throw that up here right now. We want you to be a member of the Parent Revolution private Facebook group. So if you are seeing this on another channel, please find us on facebook.com/groups/Parent Revolution. And that's where you will find me going live like this. You will find a lot of free giveaway content, strategies, conversations, and most importantly, community with other parents. So here you have it. 12-week prep cycle is what you want to aim for. And what that means is that right now, it is time for juniors to be preparing for these exams. Now, granted, we are still in the pandemic. We do not know what is going to happen with spring testing, depending on geographic location. But depending on the schools that you guys are thinking of having your students apply to, I would say if you haven't already built your list by this time in junior year, you're really kind of behind the 8 ball. You should have at least a working list with some idea, geographic region. I can do a training on that another time. That's a big part of what I offer is being able to help families build the right fit college list with the right programs. We talked yesterday about non-impacted majors. There are so many pieces to the strategy here. But if you want to try to do this on your own, I recommend a 12-week prep cycle before their first exam date. That you just make sure that you're not just throwing them out there and expecting that everything is going to be fine without prep. And by the way, prep doesn't just mean, hey, honey, go. Certainly, it's great to use free resources. They can use Khan Academy or the free resources online or anything else. But if you want them to gain admissions to a selective or highly selective school in order to differentiate themselves, I've got one more strategy I'm going to share with you right now. And this one really does surprise some people. So I'm going to now talk about the fact that you need your GPA and your test scores to correlate. What we're saying here is that it's one thing for your student to have straight A's. We've talked earlier this week about grade inflation being a trend, unfortunately. So what that means is there are so many more students getting A's and lots of B's that a 3.5 GPA today doesn't carry the same impact for a college admissions officer as it might have 10 or 20 years ago, only because there are so many of them, right? It doesn't mean your student didn't do great. It just means that you have to that they're looking for data points to back up their confidence. Because what do colleges care about? They care about two things. Well, they care about students, of course, too. But I'm going to make a point about their business. They care about yield. Okay, how many students are going to say yes to us if we say yes to them? That's how they get, their rankings and, how exclusive are they? Their yield is very important. And then attrition, right? So attrition means how many of these students are going to actually make it through an undergraduate degree in 4 years or maybe 5 years. So they want high yield and they want low attrition, right? They want a lot of people saying yes and not a lot of people dropping out. And this is one of the ways that they think about that. So they are looking at your students' test scores in comparison with their GPA. And I'll tell you the problem is that a lot of students will come in and they'll say, well, my GPA is 3.75 and that's fantastic. But then you look at the SAT and it's way down here at 1250, or their ACT score is, national average is around 21. So you can see the disconnect, right? A 21 is more of an average score, and therefore you would expect an average GPA with it. So you want those things to be strong across the line here. Of course, only one SAT or ACT, as we've said. They're not going to have to take both. So be aware that you want those scores to correlate. You may want to screenshot that image. You can certainly feel free to do so. And, as we think about this stuff, I guess one of the things that has to be said is that it's not enough to just talk about the scores or the tests. We want to talk about how to make sure our kids are ready. So here you see at the bottom of my screen an important thing to keep in mind. The PSAT is there to help identify gaps. And it's there to help identify those gaps long before 11th grade. So if you're the parent of a 9th or 10th grader or even younger, this is really important. You want your student to be professionally evaluated based on what that because you're going to get a score report and you're going to look at it and it's like, okay, this score was this, that score was that, but what do I do with that information? So what you do with that is you come to a professional who can help you know how to remediate the gaps in the student's understanding on an individuated level. It's not about a big class. It's not about just expecting the school to do this, because your student's going to be taking classes there, but they're not going to have somebody taking them one-on-one through the PSAT. And if you do that young enough, here's the cool thing. If you just even 4 weeks of PSAT prep prior to the upcoming year with last year's scores, right? So I'm looking at something from last October, but I'm in the summer. We can do a obviously my company is Valley Prep Tutoring, right? We can do a diagnostic on that. We can see where the student is now. We can remediate some of those gaps so that every year from 9 to 10, 10 to 11, they're making progress. So by the time they get to an SAT or ACT, it's not like, oops, I never really understood linear equations and now my score drops. And oh dear, I don't understand inference questions and therefore my English score just went down. So there are many, different ways that students lose points, and the way to figure this out is not at the last minute. It's starting young. Now, if your student's currently a junior, don't panic. Certainly, you can get a lot done right now, and that's not going to be a problem. But I just felt like it was important to say that as we think about these exams, there are a lot of reasons that parents don't like them, that students feel stressed out by them, but for better or for worse, they probably are here to stay for at least the immediate foreseeable future. And with that in mind, as a mom, as a dad, it's your job to help make sure that they can get through that with their confidence intact and with a score that they can put on that application and feel good about. So if there's any questions about this, I welcome your questions. You can just post them here in the Parent Revolution Facebook group. I will respond to questions in this group. It is a private group exclusive. So this is the place where you get access to me to ask those kinds of questions. And in the meantime, I just want to wish you just peace around this topic of the SAT and ACT exam. This is, at the end of the day, something that people just want to put behind them as quickly as possible. And once you get a good score, you can do that. You don't have to stress out your student. But you hovering over a student saying, did you do Khan Academy? Did you do your practice book? You give them a big book that looks like the New York City phone book and say, here you go. It's not a very supportive feeling on the other side by the student if they don't also have a place to ask questions, to get support. Obviously, that's what Valley Prep Tutoring does. If you would like some support from Valley Prep, I will be your personal connector to some of the best tutors here in the LA area, but we offer obviously on Zoom to anybody across the country. And we've got clients from Boston and New York to Nashville to Colorado, all over the place, right? So reach out to us. We're happy to help. We're here for you. I'm here for you. I'm very firm in my commitments when I make them. And I feel that way, not just here, but certainly with my clients, with my company, Valley Prep Tutoring, with my family, with my friends. Like when I say I'm going to show up, I show up. So here I am on Friday. I'm wishing you a great weekend ahead, and don't stress the test. Don't get scared. Just get them prepared. Talk to you next time.